Hey folks, this is Rhykker with another Diablo lore video. In today's episode, we discuss the story of Diablo 2's expansion, Lord of Destruction, how the heroes who defeated Diablo and Mephisto would have to stop the final brother, Baal. This is part 16 of a video series in which we explore the major players in the story of Diablo. From the Nephilim to Tyrael to Deckard Cain to Diablo himself, and give a crash course on what exactly is going on story-wise in this game series. Feel free to check out our previous episodes if you haven't, and be sure to have subscription notifications turned on so you can catch new episodes when they come out. In our last episode, we covered the events of Diablo 2, how a band of heroes came together to stop Diablo and his brothers from doing evil stuff in the world. So we left off with our intrepid band having just killed Mephisto and Diablo, and shattered their soul stones at the Hellforge. But what about Baal? Last we spoke of him, he was traveling northwest to Mount Arreat in order to corrupt the worldstone. But before being powerful enough to do that, he would need to first retrieve his soul stone. And who had his soul stone? Poor Maurice, who was unable to follow Tyrael's instructions and bring the soul stone to literal hell to destroy it, and instead fled about as far away from Kurast as he possibly could, all the way back west to Westmarch. Between holding the soul stone and all the crazy stuff he had witnessed, Maurice was driven to the brink of madness, aged about 40 years, and ultimately got himself arrested and sent to a sanitarium at some point. It was an eventful year for him. Then, one day, a visitor came to see Maurice. A visitor that the poor man assumed to be Tyrael. Tyrael asked for the soul stone, and Maurice was relieved to be able to finally surrender the burden. But then we got the greatest twist in Diablo history. That was not, in fact, Tyrael, but Baal. Baal killed poor Maurice and, having retrieved his soul stone, then headed north from Mount Arreat, slaying entire villages along the way, like you do. Those who he killed were transformed into demonic soldiers, and Baal grew his army with every mile. By the time he marched on Mount Arreat, his army numbered in the thousands. This is where he faced the barbarians, the sworn and ancient defenders of the worldstone. Mount Arreat itself had been built by Inarius as a shell to protect it, and while the barbarians put up a valiant fight, Baal killed his way to Sescheron, the barbarian capital. It was an enormous city, and its gates guarded the single path leading further up the mountain, the path to the worldstone. Chief Elder Kanai, whom we spoke about in a past lore addendum video, was the leader of the city at the time of Baal's arrival. And that day became known in history as the day all hope was lost. So, a bit of a spoiler there about how that went. In a single day, the city was sacked, despite the barbarians putting up the most powerful defense they could muster. If only they all had storm shields, maybe they could have survived that hardcore assault. Baal continued on up Mount Arreat, fighting more barbarians along the way, who were driven back to their final bastion, Harrogath, the Act 5 town in Diablo 2. The senior man-at-arms of Harrogath, Qualkek, was readying his warriors, but one of the town's 7 elders, Oust, proposed a different plan. They could cast a druidic spell of warding that would prevent any demon from setting foot inside Harrogath. You know, if they were successful. They were barbarians, not druids after all. Though you can say that druids and barbarians are cousins. Now, after much deliberation and realizing there was no real alternative, 6 of the 7 members of the Council of Elders of Harrogath agreed to this plan. But one continued to stubbornly oppose the plan. Nilathak. Yeah, that jerk. So the 6 other elders went to cast the spell, and they were successful. And by successful, I mean they all died. But their sacrifice made the spell work. No demon could enter Harrogath, including Baal. But then Nilathak seemed to not trust the spell, I guess, and instead snuck off to strike a deal with Baal. In exchange for sparing the town, Nilathak would give Baal the most holy token ever of the barbarians, the Relic of the Ancients, which would allow Baal to access the summit of Mount Arreat while bypassing fighting its 3 ancient defenders. So, he basically betrayed everything that barbarians ever stood for by allowing Baal to get to the worldstone in exchange for sparing Harrogath which was already impervious to Baal's attacks thanks to the other elders who literally died to ensure Harrogath's survival. That's some big brain moves right there. Oh, and the demons laid siege to Harrogath anyway. Like, literally, they couldn't enter the town, but they encircled it and took control of various outposts on the mountain slopes around it, and killed and captured any barbarians who would leave Harrogath. So the people of Harrogath had to begin rationing food and water since supply lines and agriculture were cut off. Good job accomplishing nothing, Nihlathak. Now, remember Elder Oust? Oh, and tangent here. It's ironic that it was not Oust that made the Faustian deal. Anyway, Oust had a daughter, Anya. After her dad and all the other elders but Nihlathak died, she found this suspicious, and she confronted Nihlathak, and the two argued. So just like any innocent, well-intentioned person would do, Nihlathak kidnapped the grief-stricken Anya and imprisoned her within a freezing spell inside the frozen river within a crystalline passage in the mountain far away from the town. Can you tell I don't like this guy? Meanwhile, Baal made it to the Worldstone Keep at the summit of Mount Arreat, and then within it, he found the Worldstone. He used his Soul Stone, the Shard of Destruction, which had grown more and more powerful with every thing and person he destroyed along the way, and he fused it with the Worldstone. Now, all that destruction accumulated within the Shard started to spread into the Worldstone like a virus, corrupting it, so that it could ultimately be used to weaponize humanity against the forces of heaven. At that point, once it's already too late, our merry band of heroes finally shows up. At this time, however, they are joined by two new additions to the party. One was an assassin, a member of the Vizhaktar, aka the Order of the Mage Slayers, whom we spoke about in a past video. And the other was a druid who had returned to try to protect Mount Arreat, now that the prophecy of the end times was coming true. Now, we don't know much about either of these characters, not even their names, but we know they joined the other 5 heroes and arrived at Harrogath, ready to save the world. Our heroes broke the siege of Harrogath by killing Shenk the Overseer, the demon general leading the siege. They rescued Qualkek's barbarian warriors, who were captured and imprisoned by Baal's minions. Now, the barbarian in our party of heroes was from around here, so this was something of a homecoming for him. He had been friends with a barbarian named Bannock, but Bannock died during the siege. Bannock was the last living child of Mala, a healer in Harrogath, who had, in her youth, aspirations to become a sorceress, but she just sucked at it. So she settled for healer instead. It was her fallback career. Mala had also overheard Anya and that jerk Nihlathak arguing, and she noticed Anya's subsequent disappearance. So she tipped off our barbarian hero and his companions, and they went to find and rescue Anya, who was still frozen in carbonite, a block of ice. That is until Mala crafted a thawing potion to get her out. At this point, Anya could testify to Nihlathak's betrayal, since, like the Bond villain that he is, he revealed everything to Anya once he captured her. Nihlathak fled into hiding, and his status as elder was stripped. Anya, being the only child of one of the former elders, was defaulted to the status of leader of Harrogath, a role that she felt woefully underqualified for. Meanwhile, our heroes went to kill Nihlathak, finally putting an end to his shenanigans, a detour on their road to Baal that was absolutely worth taking, because again, screw that guy and his damn corpse explosions. Stupid one-shotting Nihlathak. So as our heroes now continue on after Baal, because of stupid Nihlathak, they can't use the Relic of the Ancients to bypass the defenses of Mount Arreat because, oh yeah, he gave it to Baal. So once our heroes reach the summit of Mount Arreat, they're forced to fight the Ancients, 3 warriors that we spoke about in our second lore video so many years ago, Korlik, Madoc, and Talik. These 3 ancients were given the honor of guarding the Worldstone for all eternity. Our 7 heroes defeated the 3 ancients, proving that they were worthy of entering the Worldstone Keep. And with that, our heroes plunged into the keep, killing their way through waves of minions of destruction, and ultimately killed Baal. Unfortunately, they were too late to save the Worldstone. Tyrael showed up. He'd been too weakened to fight Baal himself, and he saw the sorry state of the Worldstone, and he determined that it could never be restored to its original state. So he teleported our heroes to safety, then cast his sword Eldruin into the Worldstone, shattering the giant crystal and causing an explosion that turned Mount Arreat into a smoking crater, devastating the surrounding lands and blowing Tyrael's physical form to smithereens. It didn't kill Tyrael, he just lost his physical form. This is an important distinction because angels can't respawn the way demons do. The explosion was so loud and powerful that it was heard all the way in Westmarch, and toxic clouds rained down around Arreat Crater for days. So the geographical area once known as the Northern Steppes, home of the barbarians, would henceforth be called the Dreadlands, aka the Badlands, aka the Wastes. And that is the story of Diablo 2's expansion, Lord of Destruction. But what would happen to Sanctuary now that the worldstone was destroyed? What would become of Tyrael? What happened to the souls of the 3 primevals? All these questions and more will be answered as we continue to explore this Diablo lore series. Stay tuned. Until then, be sure to get caught up on past episodes. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.